You want to know how to measure your EQ, your emotional intelligence quotient? Get an entire month of courses for free, including boosting your emotional intelligence over at thegreatcoursesplus.com/brain. There's no risk and no reason you can't make this year your year to learn with purpose. Life presents the toughest challenges. Every day you are faced with decisions that test your ability to express who you really want to be in this world. We're told to keep saying affirmations and keep thinking positively, but what do you do when that stuff doesn't work? Welcome to the Overwhelmed Brain, where you'll learn to make decisions that are right for you so that you can create the life you want now. Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Paul Coliani and I am here to help you increase your emotional intelligence so that you can avoid dysfunction, handle toxic situations with grace and ease, and show up as your authentic self. Everything I talk about on this show is my personal opinion and is meant for informational and educational purposes only. Always consult a medical or psychological professional before making any changes that could affect your physical or mental health. Great to have you here today. I'm going to talk about a couple things today. I think one of them is going to be about maybe dating. And if you're married or you're in a relationship now and you think, well, I don't date, don't think there's not something here for you. There's always something in every episode, at least I'm told. At least people write to me and they say, I heard your show on this subject and I didn't need to listen to that subject, but suddenly I found myself getting value from it. So that's my goal with every episode. So if I ever come out with an episode that doesn't seem to apply to you, do know that I do try to add value to every episode for everyone that listens. Speaking of which, I'm also aware of something that has been very valuable for me to learn is that you absolutely cannot please everyone. You cannot please everyone. In fact, some people will love you, some people will hate you, some people will love what you talk about, and some people will find you boring. And I think that's a great lesson in life. I've been doing this for about 7+ years now, this podcast at least. And when I come out with a show, I will sometimes get reviews, most of them positive. I'm very fortunate to have a lot of positive reviews, so thank you for those who are doing that. And then I'll get the negative reviews, and then I'll get criticisms, and I'll get emails. And boy, you really have to be resilient when you do something like this. When you put yourself out in the public eye, which not everyone can relate to because some people don't do that. They're I'm an introvert. They're more introverted than I am. But when you do this, when you put yourself out there, I think it's okay to expect to be judged. Some people aren't going to like this. It's okay to be criticized. It's okay to be called out. And if you don't think it's okay, that's okay too, because I don't like it either. I don't like being called out, criticized, judged, and told that I'm doing something that's either wrong or even harmful. I've been told I've done harmful things on this show or my other show, Love and Abuse, just because of the subject matter and probably the way I approach things. But it doesn't deter me. Now, if I'm really doing harmful things, I will stop that. But every criticism or judgment that has come my way, I will do my research. I will ask other people. I will get professionals involved and find out if what I'm doing really is harmful or if it's just their take on it. And a lot of the times I get people that hear a snippet of my show, or they listen to a few minutes of a particular episode that I've done, and then they'll make a harsh criticism or judgment. And I don't think that's enough time to evaluate any content, but I understand that you could hear a snippet of something and then make a judgment about it. Why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because we all put ourselves out there in some way, shape, or form, and we are going to get criticized. We are going to be judged. And sometimes those judgments will come from people whose opinion we either respect, admire, or at least trust. Somebody's opinion that we might trust is our boss or our partner, our romantic partner, or our family. Somebody that we probably look up to or hope that they look up to us or think highly of us. But sometimes they don't say things that reflect that. And when they don't say things that reflect a high value, or at least not a low value, or a dismal perception of us, then are we resilient enough and also understanding enough to know that this is one of those you can't please everyone type of situations? That is very difficult with certain relationships. If you want your mom or dad to be proud of you and they're narcissistic and they don't care about you and they neglect you, it's a very, very difficult path to travel when they don't say things that show that they value you. You know, this is if your mom and dad are still around, or if you've had trouble with your mom and dad, you know what I mean. Sometimes mom or dad or any of your caretakers, we want to hear something that is supportive of us and maybe even complimentary. Just to feel like we belong, that we're cared for, that we're loved. All of these very important aspects of living life. It would be great to be able to rely on people to do that for us. But when we don't get that, and the more it happens, it sure seems the more miserable life gets. And it falls into the category of you can't please everyone. And some people might actually say you can't please anyone. I've tried pleasing everyone and I can't please them. And this falls into a category of something else that I might talk about, I don't know, today or maybe another episode, where we tend to focus on what other people think of us and how they feel about us and if they care about us. We tend to focus a lot on that. And I do believe a lot of that's hardwired. You know, we're social creatures and we want to be accepted by our family and the group so that we're not left out in the cold, we don't starve. All of this is hardwired into us, I believe, at the deepest level, that if we're not accepted and we're cast out or cast aside, then at some deep level, we're going to experience a pain or suffering. And nobody wants to experience that. Most people don't want to experience pain or suffering. So there is a part of us that seek validation. There's a part of us that seek lovingness and caring and support from others, and even praise and even admiration and hopefully respect. It would be nice to get that from certain people in our lives. It would be great to get that from everyone in our lives. But can you live with the fact that not only can you not please everyone, but sometimes you can't please anyone? That doesn't mean that you'll never please anyone. It just means that the people that you've been around, if they aren't caring and loving and supportive toward you, they're probably not the right people to count in your statistics. If you have ongoing statistics of who cares about you and who supports you and who's treating you with kindness and respect, and all of the people in your life haven't done that yet, then maybe those people are a condensed population of people that fit the category of you can't please everyone. In other words, let's just say that you can't please 1 out of every 5 people. But for some reason, all of those 5 people are in your life and you can't please any of them. Those are the wrong 5 people. Those aren't the people that you're supposed to please, and those are the people that aren't supposed to please you. They have other agendas. They have other roles in other people's lives. They might be perfect for someone else, but they're not perfect for you. And quite frankly, that sucks. I'm going to be honest. It sucks because these people could be family. They could be people that you've made commitments with. They could be in your very home right now. And that might be the world you know. And, you know, if you come from a small town, you probably know what I mean, because people in small towns, sometimes you'll stay in that small town with the same people, the same family, the same friends, growing up from childhood and moving into the adult world, but really not moving away from all those people that you grew up with and grew up around. So all you know is that tiny little world, and you think that is reality. You think that's how the world works. Fortunately for me, I started traveling when I was like 12. I would travel up and down the East Coast because my mom and my stepfather lived in Massachusetts, and my dad, he lived in different places here and there, Florida and Carolinas and Ohio. And I would start traveling to see my dad during the school year, and then my mom and stepdad and the rest of my family the rest of the time. So I did that for a few years until I finally moved back with my mom and stepdad and stayed with them pretty much indefinitely until I moved out of the house. But my point is, I met so many more people on this earth starting to travel and starting to get away from my small town and meeting others that taught me how different people are in different areas of at least the U.S. And it taught me so much about myself, because not only did I meet other people that were kind and friendly, but I also met other people that were disrespectful, and some of them were bullies. And some of them taught me some very valuable lessons, like how to pronounce my R's. Because I used to live in Massachusetts, and I would pronounce my R's like ah. So I would park the car in the parking lot. Can you believe I ever had that accent? No, I can't either. But I did. That's how I started life. I spent my first 12 years or 13 years of life in that area of the country. And as soon as I moved to North Carolina, boy, my classmates really hit me hard with those R's and my pronunciations. They would say this, say CAR. And it was hard. But I practiced every night, and I was able to change my accent, which goes to show you I was willing to change to be accepted. And I'm not saying you should do that. I'm not trying to promote that at all. But when I was a kid, I wanted to be accepted, and I was in a school full of people that talked one way, and I was the outsider for sure. And I also went to a school where I was one of very few people of the same race. So I was one of the few white kids in school, and that was a whole new experience for me, but it gave me a taste of what's out there, who's out there, and all the different types of personalities that you can meet just by getting out of the small sphere or circle of influence that you're in every day. So imagine the people that you hang around with the most. I mean, this is that Jim Rohn quote, you are the average of the 5 people that you hang out with most. Imagine if you weren't around those 5 people or 10 people or whoever it is, and how would your life be different if that were so? Because you would either be alone or you would be with other people. I think the hardest part about being around the same people all the time is that as you grow, and if they don't, they only know the old you. And they typically will treat you like the old you, causing you to show up as the old you to make life easier. Imagine if you stopped showing up as the old you around the people that you've known for a long time. That's the one thing I started to do with my own family. As soon as I started learning how to honor my boundaries and getting in alignment with my values and practicing authenticity, as soon as I started doing all of this, I call it taking risks. When you take risks, being yourself around the people that have known you for the longest time, you get to find out who really supports you, who really respects you, and who really cares about your happiness. That doesn't mean that the people that disagree or don't like what you've become are bad people or don't love you in their own way. But I find it a healthier version of love when you can support someone's path to happiness and respect that path. And even if you disagree with that path, you still support them being on it. And when you show up as your authentic self, someone who's honoring themselves and has learned a lot of life's lessons and has done the personal growth thing or the therapy thing, and you are just feeling good about yourself and feeling good about the direction you're going, and then you show up in front of certain people that knew you before that happened, and you take a risk of being yourself around them, you get to find out who they are. And I call it a risk because it's a challenge for you who's done a lot of work on themselves to choose to be yourself and deal with the consequences of that. I can't even believe I have to say that. You have to deal with the consequences of being your authentic self. And I don't like saying that. I don't think anybody should have to deal with the consequences of being themselves. Unless you're somebody who beats people up or gets angry all the time and people don't like being around you, then I can understand that it might be a little bit difficult for people to be around you, and there are consequences to that. But for the most part, people who listen to this show, people who are on the personal growth and development path or therapy path or any type of work that they've done on themselves, anyone who wants to improve themselves should be able to show up as their authentic self and be accepted for who they are. It doesn't mean you have to be liked. It doesn't mean everyone will like you. It doesn't mean that everyone's going to be impressed, or maybe they'll say things like, oh, you think you're smarter than me? It doesn't mean that you're going to get a lot of great responses. Some people have to adjust to you, especially those who have not done any type of personal growth and have lived, and this is a metaphor, have lived in the same town all their lives, around the same people all their lives, not having been exposed to other worldly people and things and situations. If they haven't left that hometown psyche, again, this is more of a metaphor than anything, then you may have to face people that aren't able to open their mind as much. And this isn't for everyone. Some people live in the same town, both in reality and metaphorically, all their lives, and they're still open-minded. I know people like this. Maybe you do too. I hope you do. But that hometown mentality where nothing ever changes and nothing should ever change, that's what I'm talking about. If you are around people like that, where nobody should ever change and you should always be the same, then you have to be really careful who you're looking to and looking for your worth from. Meaning, are you measuring your worth from people who have closed minds? I hope not. I hope that's not you. I think there are some people saying, oh, yeah, that's me. I hope it's not, though. I hope that's not you. Because if it is, I need you to change your mind. I want you to change your mind. I think it would be very helpful for you to look at the people that you are trying to receive love and support and maybe even admiration or at minimum respect from, and decide if they are open-minded enough to let go of the old you. Imagine if people let go of the old you to allow the new you to thrive and flourish. Imagine if they let that new you be who you are. Because when they can, now you have something special. Now you have a relationship that can grow and progress into the sky's the limit. When you have people like that in your life that can support you at that level, where you show up as a different person and they don't know who you are anymore, but they still respect you and they still care about you, and they don't understand maybe what you've been through, but they're happy that you're happy. Wow, that is a totally different feeling. And I speak from both sides of this. I have shown up as this new and improved version of me, at least from my perspective, a new and improved version from the person I used to be. I've shown up to friends and family like this, and some friends just disappeared. They're gone. We're not really compatible anymore. We can't really talk about the same things, and that's okay. There was nothing really hurtful said or harsh said. It was just, what do we talk about now? I mean, we're in different places, and that's okay. That happens. And then I have friends that have grown closer, and then I had family, and family is the final frontier of personal growth and development. When you are around family who've known you as who you have been to them all their lives, and you show up as someone different, that's a challenge. That's the biggest challenge typically in one's life. You show up as this new person in their life, and now they have to get used to it, and they have to figure out who you are. And some people will be very accepting because, again, they want your happiness. As long as you're happy, I'm happy. That's the best kind of support you can ask for. As long as you're happy, I'm happy. What a fantastic philosophy to have for everyone in life. Hey, if you're happy, I'm happy. That just eliminates all the resistance and the arguments and any conversations that you need to have, Because as long as the other person's happy, that makes you happy, because if the other person's happy, you should be happy. People that you love and support, I believe you should be happy for when they're happy. But typically what happens is you'll have one or two or more people in your life that don't like the new you. They don't really like how you're showing up in their life because they had some measure of control in their life. They had some measure of balance by you being the way you were. But now that you're showing up as this other person, somebody they don't know, somebody they don't recognize, and especially somebody that maybe they can't control, it makes them uncomfortable. And they don't like it. They don't like being in this strange place. And because of that, they're going to resist who you are. And they'll resist it so much that they'll treat you like they used to treat you in the past. And you will find that they have so much resistance that you may end up reverting back to your old self and old ways and old patterns just to make it easier on you, just to make it easier to get through the moment or the day or the week, because they're unwilling to change and you don't want to spend all your time resisting their unwillingness to change. So you become your old self. And boy, when that happens, where did you go? Where did that new person go? Where is that improved person? And why is that old person coming back? Why are they coming back? Why is that old self still in there making up for someone else's inability to accept you? I'm not saying there's a good answer for this. I'm not saying that I haven't done this myself. There are people in life that will certainly never change, and it's just a lot easier to accept their inability to not accept you. So you'll just show up as your old self just to get through a moment with them. And if you have to do that, you have to do that. But I certainly don't recommend that forever. I certainly recommend that you start doing your best to be the new and improved you around people that you haven't been, so that they get used to the new you, and then they have a choice whether they're going to change or not. Because you've already done some changes, or a lot of them. And when you've done a lot of changes, you don't want to revert back to the old self. Typically, you don't really want to go back there because the old self got the old results. The old self had arguments with those people. The old self got steamrolled by those people. The old self was a people pleaser or had a toxic relationship with those people and did things that they aren't proud of or responded in ways that they wish they had responded differently. If you bring that old self back and it has to stay around these certain people, then what you're doing is accepting them, not accepting you. And that's in the same vein as honoring people dishonoring you. If somebody is mistreating you or treating you in a bad way, and you decide to show up as your old self, and maybe that old self couldn't handle it well or just allowed it to happen, then essentially what you're doing is honoring them, dishonoring you. And that's a very bad place to be, because what does that do inside of you? Where does that put you? I mean, you know as well as I do where it puts you. It just causes you to live in the past and live as you were. And if you really loved who you were and you were incredibly happy as who you were, then you would not have done any personal growth. You would not have made any improvements, because who you were would have been fine. But if you've done any type of personal growth and development, then you probably want to be that new and improved version of you. And because of that, I come right back to taking risks. Taking risks means risking being your authentic self around others. I know it can be done. I've done it myself, and I continue to do it. And it's still scary sometimes, because there are people in my life that I haven't seen in a while, and I probably haven't seen since I started my whole journey, that if they showed up in my life, how would I act then? Would I act the same way? Would I de-evolve into that person I used to be? Or would I be the person that I'm very proud to be today? And this does have something to do with what I mentioned earlier about dating. And when you are ready to date or are dating or meeting new people, who are you showing up as? And who should you show up as? And is there a right way or a wrong way to do it? I'm going to read you a portion of an email when we get back, and we'll talk more about that right after this. Like I mentioned in the beginning, the Great Courses Plus is yours for free for an entire month. That means every course in their system is yours for the picking, and there is plenty to choose from. I want you to head over to thegreatcoursesplus.com/brain. Take advantage of your free month. This is totally worth it. I'm watching a course called Boost Your Emotional Intelligence. And I tell you what, these are highly produced professional courses. I feel like I'm in an auditorium watching a lecture from a professor, and he gets into it. And there's some real interviews with people that are dealing with emotional situations, like this one that I'm watching right now. This woman at work is trying to deal with avoidance and how to do other behavior besides avoidance. And there's a recorded interview with her with the teacher of the course. And he's asking her, what else can you do besides avoid? What can you do in place of that? And she really had to think about it. And when she talked about the situations that she avoided, she remembered that every time she just went for it and got out of her comfort zone, it worked out. It was successful every single time. So the teacher's reminding her that she tends to focus on the failures instead of the successes. And if every time it has worked for her, then there's something more going on there. But it goes on and on. I just find it fascinating, especially the live conversations that can really help you connect with someone and what they're going through, and especially related to what you're going through. So that's something I'm enjoying. I know there's something that you're going to enjoy in their library. They've got thousands of video and audio courses on hundreds of fascinating topics. The courses are all taught by the best professors and the top experts in their fields. Plus, with the Great Courses app, you're free to watch, listen, and learn on any device at any time, no matter where you are in the world. I'm totally digging it. I can't believe I didn't sign up sooner, and there's no reason not to sign up today. Go to thegreatcoursesplus.com/brain, get your free month, and use this streaming service that lets you learn with purpose. thegreatcoursesplus.com/brain. And I also want to mention BetterHelp. BetterHelp is the professional counseling service that you can use online through a messaging system, on the phone, on video chat. And let me just share this with you. I got feedback on BetterHelp. I love getting feedback from listeners who use the products and services that I talk about in this show. Like, if you've been listening a while, you know that I vet every company that comes through, and there's a lot of companies I say no to. I get a lot of emails, so I can make an assessment there. But somebody wrote to me and said they've been using BetterHelp for the last few months. In fact, this is exactly what they say. I'm going to read it word for word. I've been using BetterHelp for the last few months, and I love it. It's helped me decrease my anxiety. I love that I can maintain my privacy doing sessions from home. I can't say enough good things about it. It's a great platform for those of us who have a hard time reaching out for help. They signed their name, but I'm not going to say because I didn't ask them permission to read this yet. But I want to express that this is one of many messages that I'm getting about BetterHelp, and it just seems to be a fantastic service all around for a lot of people. And if you've been dealing with any type of stress or anxiety, or you're having trouble sleeping, or you have some old trauma you have to deal with, or maybe some relationship issues, or you're dealing with some personal stuff like self-esteem or self-worth, BetterHelp might be the perfect solution for you. I want you to check them out over at betterhelp.com. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/brain. If you go there as a listener of The Overwhelmed Brain, you'll get 10% off your first month, and you'll be joining over 1 million people who are also taking charge of their mental health and also trust this service. I trust them too. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/brain. Welcome back. Like I said, I'm going to talk about dating and how you show up on that date, and maybe the best way to show up. And if you aren't in the dating scene, I think it's still important to consider this stuff no matter how you show up in any situation, because do you want to be you, or do you want to be who you believe the other person wants you to be? I tell you what, I showed up my entire life like that. And I got burnt out in relationships. I built resentments. I got burnt out in my jobs. I got burnt out all over the place because I was so sick of adapting and being the chameleon. And all I mean by that is the chameleon changes colors and adapts to its environment to protect itself. And if you spend your life protecting yourself and trying to adapt and trying to show up in a way that isn't really you because you don't want to cause waves and you don't want to cause trouble and you're fearing conflict, then you're probably burning out too. And I think this applies even with new people that you want to make a good first impression with. And the reason I chose dating is because somebody wrote me, I don't know, a couple years ago, it was a while back. I keep all my emails. I go through them, and I want to make sure that I cover every single topic that people send me. So you may have sent me mail a long time ago, and I'm reading it just now. And if that's the case, I promise I'm not trying to ignore you. It's just that I have a lot of subjects to talk about, and I just can't get to them all. But I eventually do, and someday when I've exhausted every single subject in the world, then maybe I'll stop recording these things. But until then, I'm going to continue tackling every subject that comes my way. And some of them are difficult to overcome, and I do my best. So let's see if I could do well with this person who wrote, I recently started listening to your podcast. That was, like I said, a couple years ago, because of a problem that keeps popping up and I feel is affecting my life significantly. I've been single for the last 10 years, and after breaking up with my boyfriend, it was first nice to be alone for a while, but I've always wanted a family, and I realized that I also miss having someone to share my life with. In the beginning, I was really picky with finding the right person. I'm shy, and I absolutely hate first dates with new people, and in the last year or so, this has resulted in me falling for so many of my friends and coworkers, and basically anyone that's just being nice to me. I often misinterpret their kindness and friendship for a possible interest. I think this is part of my problem. I hate first dates, so getting involved with a friend would be a great way to bypass that first date, in my eyes. I sometimes believe that I am even more infatuated with the idea of simply having a relationship than with the actual person. Recently, this happened to me with one of my best friends that I swore I would never fall for. He broke up with his girlfriend, and we started hanging out more. He started texting me more, and we hung out together, and I felt like he was acting a bit jealous when I told him about someone I had a crush on, and that made me fall for him even more, and I ended up telling him that. He acted really nice about it, and I genuinely thought nothing had changed between us, but I recently found out through mutual friends that he's dating someone else, and he's been lying to me about it. That's when I realized that I need to change. I need to stop falling for all my friends because I got very close to losing one of my best friends. Long story short, I would love to hear your views on being single for a long time and ending up liking basically everyone that is kind to you. I hear more people around me that are also struggling with this. All right, well, thank you for writing that. I don't know if you still listen to the show, but if you do, this is all about you. This is the person who wrote. I appreciate you sharing this, and I hope you're in a wonderful relationship now, but to those that aren't, or if the person who wrote is still listening and still struggling with this, I want to tell you that it's not just a problem for people who have been single for a while. It's also a problem for people who have been single for a minute, like the way I used to be. So let me relate to you here from my perspective. As soon as my divorce was final, I started seeking the next partner. I started seeking someone new. This was not a healthy thing for me to do because I was still emotionally wounded. I was still seeking someone else to fulfill me without even knowing what it was like to be single. So there are people on both sides of this. There are people that have been single for a long time and are probably doing what you're saying here, is just falling for people just because they're being nice to you. And then there are people like the person I used to be who, as soon as they got out of a relationship, they started seeking the next one because I didn't want to be alone. So you decided that I'm going to be alone for a while, and that's good. I'll get to know myself. I'll be okay being alone. I'll be happy being alone, or whatever your thoughts were. And then you decided, okay, I'm ready to date again. Now, what ended up happening in your case is that you started dating people that were close to you because you really didn't like the idea of getting to know someone. You didn't like that first date feeling or that first date situation. And I totally get that. It can be very uncomfortable. It can cause anxiety. It can cause stress. There's a lot involved with getting to know someone new, which is why I have a couple suggestions for you anyone who wants to date. First of all, the dating scene has changed quite a bit in the last several years because many people meet significant others online. And especially now after 2020, when a lot of us stayed at home and we weren't going out to our regular hangouts or anywhere because of COVID and all that, I'm sure dating online has been even more popular because it's hard to go out and meet people when you're afraid of getting COVID. I'm sure that has increased as well. But to your point, yes, it can be difficult to go on a date with some stranger and then get to know them and then go through that process. But my couple pieces of advice for anyone on the dating scene is, one, don't look for a potential romantic partner. Don't seek one out. It's a bonus if it happens, but don't seek one out, because what ends up happening is you develop a mindset that as you're on the date, you're constantly thinking about how you can fit this person into your life romantically, or if you can fit this person into your life romantically. My biggest issue in my life is that every time I went on a date, I tried to figure out how I could fit this person into my life in a romantic way. And it was an issue for me because I never treated them as a person. I treated them as someone that was going to fit into my life in some way. And because of that, I was stressed because I was always worried about, well, if they do this behavior, am I going to like it? And I was thinking about that instead of asking them who they are and what they like to do and what they don't like to do and what are their interests. We didn't have conversations that felt natural, as if you were to talk to somebody in line at the coffee shop or wherever. And because of that, your focus is on how you can fit them into your life in a romantic way. And when it's on that, you will tend to be focused on that, and it becomes stressful. And so keep that in mind if you ever find yourself in the dating scene and you're trying to find a way to be relaxed and try to avoid all the first date jitters or stress. Don't treat them as a potential romantic partner. Treat them as somebody you're getting to know, and they could be anything. They could turn into anything. They could turn into a friend. They could turn into somebody that you go into business with. They could turn into an acquaintance that you see every now and then, or you say your goodbyes and you never see them again. And of course, they could become a romantic partner. But don't go into it thinking that's what it's all about, because if you do, if you're the type of person that stresses on dates, that's probably why you're stressing. You're probably thinking, how am I going to fit this person into my life? What do I like and what don't I like? And what if I don't like them right off? What do I do then? If you're thinking about all that stuff, then you're not putting in the quality time just to get to know them as a person. And I think that's really important. Just start to know them as a person. I mean, treat them as if you were working with them. I mean, this person who wrote says, I started dating my coworkers and my friends. How did you get to know them? Well, I worked with them, so it was easier. Well, treat people like you were working with them, like, hey, how you doing? And I know it's a different scenario, like when you're getting to know each other online, or you go out on a date and you eat, or you go to the movies, whatever it is, but try not to put so much effort into it that it stresses you out getting to know them, because you have to be comfortable being okay that this person may not be the one. You have to be comfortable being okay that you're not trying to assess them for a romantic relationship. Because if you're constantly stressed about someone fitting into your life in a certain way, then that's all you'll think about. And I know it can be very hard to get out of that mindset, especially when you're on an online dating app or something, and the whole point in the long run is to find someone in a romantic way. But if you treat every single date asking yourself if this is the one, then you're constantly putting yourself under a lot of pressure. So it can be a huge benefit just to treat someone as if you're getting to know them as a friend. And if it turns into something else, then, so be it. That'll be great. And if it doesn't, that's great too. But this means you have to be comfortable being yourself. Just like I was talking about in the last episode. Who are you? And can you show up as that person on a first date? Because if you can, you're going to be able to weed out a lot of people that aren't compatible with you. If they say, oh, I really love watching sci-fi movies, and you don't, but instead you say, oh, I watch sci-fi sometimes, instead of saying, I really don't like sci-fi at all, then you're not really being your authentic self. You're just trying to accommodate and adapt. And accommodation and adapting is what leads to burnout and resentment. I mean, not always, but in this case where you're trying to accommodate to be liked by someone else. You have to be really careful about that, especially when you're getting to know someone, because if you start off that way, then guess who you have to be the rest of the time? You have to be that person that showed up that first day. And if you decide not to be that person, you actually decide to be authentic later on, they're going to wonder where you went. Who are you? This isn't the person I met. I thought you loved sci-fi, and now you're saying you don't love it at all? Why didn't you tell me that at first? That's one example, but you get the point. But that's my first piece of advice, is not to treat anyone as a potential romantic partner. They could be, but if they aren't, then at least you're investing your time with this person in a quality way that doesn't have this agenda that is trying to fit them in your life. And also, this is my second piece of advice, you have to be really careful about seeking others in order to fulfill something that's missing in you. Now, this is going to be a little different for different people. For me, when I got out of one relationship and got into the next, the first thing I wanted to do is fill the void in my life. That void was unhappiness. It was missing connection. It was missing sharing my experiences. Everything that a good, healthy relationship is made of, I was missing that. It felt like there was a part of me missing. And when somebody leaves our life, or we break up with someone, or even worse, they die, there's a big part of us that's missing because our identity was wrapped up with them. Who we were was a part of us, not just me. Who you are is a part of someone else when you're in a romantic relationship. And when that person is no longer in your life, who you were isn't there anymore, at least part of it. Because who you were, you identified as us. And I mean, you are you and you are us. Just like I was me and I was us when I was in a relationship. But when that person left me, I became incomplete. That's what it felt like. I became less than whole. And because of that, I felt like something was missing, and I felt like the only way to fulfill what was missing was to get somebody else back in my life. And that is an unhealthy way of approaching relationships, is to seek someone else to fulfill you because you believe a part of you is missing. When you think a part of you is missing and you're seeking someone else to fill that part, what you end up doing is developing a dependency on that person to be in your life so that when no one's in your life, you're unhappy. And I know this is one of the most difficult things to get past because it took me a long time to decide that it's okay to be alone and it's okay to be single, even though I enjoy being with someone else more. So this is that other side of the fence. Like this person who wrote said that they've been single for a long time. They did that single thing and now they want someone else. The problem is, I think the desire to get someone else in her life was so strong that she came from a place inside of her that felt lack instead of wanting to add something to her life. In other words, you might get lonely after a while. So that loneliness means something inside of you. What does loneliness mean inside of you? And it's going to be different for everyone. And you may have to stop this and think about it for a while. But if you're single and you're lonely, what does that mean to you? You know, if I try this on right now and I've been single for a long time and I'm lonely, it might mean I feel unlovable. It might mean I feel like nobody loves me and nobody wants to be with me. And if those thoughts are coming up, then I need to work on something inside myself. I need to realize that I am totally lovable. And not only that, I am a catch. You got to get into that mindset that you are a catch. Because if you bring into any relationship the feeling of being unlovable and unworthy and not attractive, you're going to seek that from the other person, And you are setting up expectations for that person that they may not be able to fulfill on a day-to-day basis. They may say to you in the first month or two everything that you want to hear, but when the honeymoon phase is over, they may start settling down and not saying things as much as they used to say. And if you've been relying on that every day or quite often and you don't hear it anymore, that's going to start to affect you at the deeper level. Now, something else may be going on there, of course, but in general, if you are seeking out someone's validation all the time and attention all the time and appreciation all the time, then there might be something inside of you that hasn't been fulfilled that you're trying to fulfill through them. And I'm not saying this can't work. I'm not saying that you can't find someone to fulfill some sort of void or hole or whatever in you. I don't want to talk you out of that. If that's working for you, that's great. I'm just sharing with you the reason why loneliness can spur up, especially when you've been single for a while and now you have feelings about that. Why can it spur up? Well, it can access some deeper, maybe fears inside of you. It can access some deeper feelings that you haven't processed yet or haven't really healed from yet. And I'm not saying any of this is like a wound or dysfunctional. I just think that sometimes we do bring in needs to a relationship that sometimes we expect more of people than they can give all the time or at all. And when that happens, we might end up being not as satisfied in a relationship. But again, it really depends on the situation. I'm not talking about all relationships. Some are dysfunctional, some are toxic, and we have to be careful about that. Some people will love bomb you and gift bomb you in the beginning and then give you nothing afterward or treat you badly. I'm not talking about those types of relationships. I'm talking about typical relationships that any one of us could get into where we went into it fulfilling something in us that perhaps wasn't full in a way that made us feel good about ourselves. And when you get into relationships not feeling good about yourself, you're going to seek that feeling from the other person. And that's when it becomes draining. It can become a draining situation. And then we wonder why we are inadvertently pushing people away or they're starting to disconnect from us. Because it is possible that we have needs that haven't been self-fulfilled and we're trying to get them to fulfill those needs, yet it drains them. They may not be equipped or may not have an abundance of what you need in them to help you through what you're going through. And it can get pretty deep. If you have a fear of abandonment and you get with someone and that fear of abandonment goes away, what happens when they leave? Or what happens when they're threatening to leave? That fear of abandonment kicks in and then you act in a certain way. And your behavior comes from that fear of abandonment. And if your behavior comes from a fear of abandonment, you're going to continue to act from that place instead of a place of self-love, self-worth, self-compassion, self-respect, and self-nurturing. And when you don't act from all those self-loving, nurturing, compassionate places, you end up doing and saying things that really don't value you. And one example of that is somebody is ready to leave or they're not happy in the relationship. And instead of honoring them in their path, even though it's painful, you beg and plead and want them to stay so bad that you almost sound desperate. And I don't mean to say that in a hurtful or insulting way, because I was there. I did the same stuff. But if you are begging and pleading them to not go, instead of having a conversation that helps you understand why they feel that way, especially if they've fallen out of love with you, to have that kind of conversation in a way where you support them, even though you hate it, even though it bugs the heck out of you and you don't want it to be true. If you can get into a space where you go, well, there's nothing I can do about it. If that's how they feel, there's nothing I can do about it. It hurts. I'm going to grieve. It's going to be painful, but I have to honor their path. I can't force them to love me. I can't force them to think differently of me. I can't force them to do anything. I can certainly ask them if there's something I did wrong. I can ask them if there's something I need to work on. Give me your thoughts so I make sure that I'm showing up in the best way possible. But if they say something like, well, it's just time and we've been through a lot and I don't know how else I can connect with you, and if they are ready to go, then as painful as it is, if you're coming from a place of self-love and self-compassion and self-worth and even self-respect, if you're coming from a fulfilled place where you know you're worthy, you know you're lovable, and you know you're a catch, and I want you to drill that in, no matter what you think of yourself right now, drill in the fact that you are a catch. That way, when you're in a relationship that ends, you won't blame yourself. Because a relationship is a two-way street. Both people have to work on it. Both people have to figure it out together. And if one person is moving on and you've done your best and you've talked about it and you've tried to work things out and they just aren't on board anymore, just know you're a catch and know it's not about you and know that everybody has the ability to choose. And if they choose not to be with you anymore, again, as painful as it is, it's a choice that you also have that everyone should be able to make. And I know that just sounds so cold, it sounds so heartless, but it really is the most empowering thing you can do for someone, is to let them have a choice. Because it lets them know that you aren't there to control them or coerce them or manipulate them. It lets them know that you care about their happiness enough for them to make their own decisions for their life. And that can be freeing, that can be liberating, because if somebody did that for you, how would that feel? If you wanted to get out of a relationship and they wanted you to stay and you wanted to leave and they finally said, I don't want to hold you back. Whatever you need to do for you is what you need to do. It's going to hurt me. I'm going to cry. It's going to be painful, but I know this is the path that you want to take. And as much as it pains me to say it, I want you to take the path that makes you happiest. If somebody did that for you, that would be liberating. And if you can do that for someone else, that can also be liberating. But I kind of went off on a tangent there. Let me pull it back. Getting back to dating and getting to know someone, I want to give you a quick example before I close the show of my girlfriend. When we first started getting to know each other, we were both on an online dating service. This was shortly after my marriage, and this was me reaching out to someone to fulfill what was missing inside of me. And what was missing inside of me, I believed, was happiness and fulfillment and being satisfied with life in general. I really believed that every time I was single, I couldn't have that stuff on my own. And so like the day my divorce was final, I finally got that paperwork, the next day I got onto an online dating service and said, okay, time to start over. And I did it for about a month, and I saw some prospects. I saw some people that maybe would work out, and I had some communications with some people. But after about 30 days, I had the thought, it just sprung up out of nowhere, and I asked myself, what the heck am I doing? Why am I trying to date someone so soon after my divorce? In fact, I've never chosen to be single. I've never chosen it. It's always been something that happened to me instead of something that I made happen. And that really struck me. That really made me think differently for the first time, because choosing to be single to me had always meant being unhappy. But I realized I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I was without somebody else in my life. I was mostly unfulfilled without somebody in my life, but I never was single long enough to really understand who I was. So about 30 days after my divorce, and I was on 2 online dating sites, I decided to cancel both. I decided to say, you know what, that's it. I'm done with this. I'm going to get to know who I am. I'm going to get to know me. Just like this person who said they were single for 10 years. I'm going to get to know myself. That's what I did. And you've probably heard this story before if you've been listening a while, but the person I'm with now, my girlfriend, she sent me a message like the day before I closed both accounts. She just sent a message and said, hey, I saw your profile. I just thought it was interesting and what you're doing for business, and I thought maybe we can talk shop. And I thought that was a great message because it wasn't asking me about anything romantic. It wasn't asking me anything. It was, like I said earlier, she was just getting to know me as a person. And she just had some thoughts about my profile and what I said in it And I reached out to her and we chatted, and I told her I'm not going to date. I still have some emotional wounds I'm dealing with, and I have problems that I have to work through. So it's great to connect with you, but I just want to let you know, since this is a dating site, I will not be a good prospect for you. I was pretty honest. And she wrote back and she said, LOL, that was refreshingly honest. Thank you for being so honest. I mean, I told her more. I talk about it in another episode, but she really enjoyed connecting with someone who was just themselves, who was authentic, who wasn't afraid to show up as the person he was, and at least the person I was trying to get to know myself. And from that point on, we just kept communicating as friends. I made it clear to her that I wasn't looking for anything romantic, and that allowed us to connect at deeper levels than I really thought could happen, because I wasn't trying to impress her. That is probably the most important lesson I've ever learned in dating, is that when you try to impress someone, you are not being wholly authentic, because we're imperfect. We're not that great at everything. We're not that impressive a lot of the times. I'm not saying that you can't impress or you shouldn't impress. I'm just saying if your sole purpose is to try to impress them, then you might be trying too hard, and you might be setting the expectations pretty high, because later on, when you're no longer impressing them, what's left? So this is something that I've learned, is that not impressing somebody and being dreadfully honest sometimes can be the strongest, most authentic relationship you can create. And to the person who wrote and said, I have been single for 10 years, and how do I stop dating friends and coworkers, and what do? I keep getting myself into these situations. My advice is this. 1, ask yourself what is missing in your life when you're alone. And you can't just stop at loneliness. You need to know, if it's loneliness, then what about loneliness is a problem? What about being alone is an issue for you? And you may have to work on some of this self-love and self-compassion. And you probably have. I mean, I won't deny that you've been working on this a long time. You've been alone for a long time. It's okay to want someone in your life after being alone for a long time. And it's also important to know that maybe you don't like dating because of the way you're trying to fit them into your life. That's why I say that if you're getting to know someone, try to get to know them as if they were a coworker or a potential friend. But try not to get to know them as if they're going to be a romantic partner, because that's going to come later. That'll come later. That will come. You just have to get to that point where you feel comfortable being around them, which is what I did with my girlfriend. I felt really comfortable being around her. So there's that. And I'm going to give you one last piece of advice. I am running over time here. The last piece of advice is something I've said on the show before, and my girlfriend actually came up with this, and I think it's brilliant, is do what you love to do by yourself around others. She said it a little differently, but that's how I see it. If you do what you love to do, or you want to take up a hobby or some sort of recreational thing that puts you around people that are doing what they love to do as well, you're going to get to know them as if you were in a work environment. And a good example is that if you want to take up biking or kayaking or hiking, and when you do that, you do so with the intention that you're going to do it alone. And yeah, you could meet other people, but as long as you're enjoying yourself, when you meet other people, guess who you are to them? You are your happy, whole, fulfilled self. If you're doing things that you enjoy around other people that are doing things that they enjoy, you're going to show up as your happy, whole, fulfilled self. For the most part. I mean, there's a lot of things that may not be whole, but for the most part. Just like if you went to a wine and painting event where you drink wine and you paint pictures. I did this once. It was pretty neat. You meet a lot of other people doing something that they're doing and you're doing something that you're doing without the intention of meeting a potential romantic partner. You just go there to enjoy yourself. You do it because you like it or whatever you like. You put that on your event list. You put that on your schedule to do things that you like doing or learn something new. Go to a class, learn something new. And when you're around people that are also doing what they like doing and enjoying what they're doing, you create an environment that's very similar to work. So if you are finding that you're more comfortable around people that you have gotten to know through work or friendship, how are those formed? Those are formed by being in environments with people doing pretty similar things as you. And when that happens, those can make great relationships. And at minimum, it helps you get to know the real person without having to fuss with all that first date stuff. I hope this helps. Thanks so much for listening. I appreciate you. We'll be right back with my thank yous and goodbyes right after this. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Overwhelmed Brain. I want to thank our sponsors today, The Great Courses Plus. Head over to thegreatcoursesplus.com/brain and get an entire month with their entire course library. At least sign up, check it out. You got 30 days. You're going to love the selection and how it works. I'm totally digging it. I hope you will too. And I want to remind you of BetterHelp, HELP.com/brain, and get 10% off your first month of professional online counseling. I'm hearing from listeners all over the place that tell me that they are using it and they love it. So check it out today. I also want to thank our patrons of the week. These are the financial backers of the show. We have Kay and Angela and Donald. Great to see you again, Donald. Michelle, James, and Monica. Great to see all of you. Victoria, Tracy, Crystal, Kathleen, and Lisa. Lisa, I've known you for years. All wonderful supporters of the show. I read the names of the patrons every week. They're different every week. These are the monthly financial supporters of the show. They joined the patron program, which has all kinds of private episodes and worksheets and workbooks that you can't find anywhere else over at moretob.com. And they found value in the show, so they decided to give back. And those who give back, I want to give back too. So you can get all those resources at the patron site. And of course, I'd like to thank you on the air. Very grateful for anyone that gives to the show, people who donate, people who give monthly. You're all wonderful. Thank you so much. If you find value in the show and you want to give back, head over to moretob.com. And I want to mention the Love and Abuse podcast. I have two podcasts, this one and Love and Abuse. Love and Abuse is for difficult relationships. We talked about some relationship stuff today. And some relationships can turn into difficult relationships. In fact, I even mentioned love bombing and gift bombing. There's an episode over at Love and Abuse on love bombing and gift bombing. And if you don't know what that is, it's when somebody showers you with love and compliments and attention or gifts, especially when you're starting to date and you think they're wonderful. You think they're perfect. You have never been treated so nice, and maybe you think you're soulmates. And what that can be, love bombing and gift bombing, it can be a way to lure you into a very challenging, very toxic relationship with someone who does not have your best interest in mind, but they know how to lock you in and make you fall in love. It's just not a pretty situation. So if you want to learn about manipulative, controlling, or emotionally abusive relationships, head over to loveandabuse.com. I hope you don't have to listen to that show, but it will be very helpful for you if you do need it. And finally, I'd like to thank Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com for some of the music transitions in The Overwhelmed Brain. And the show ran a little long today, so I'm going to make this really short. I want you to know that if you are listening to this show, you are filling your cup. And I mean that with any show that you listen to that helps you improve yourself, any book that you read, any video that you watch, any person that you talk to that makes you feel good, that reminds you how worthy you are and how lovable you are and how important you are. If you are consuming any of that type of content, then I believe you're heading in the right direction. And I am a full proponent of forward momentum. As long as you are taking steps in the right direction, even if they're baby steps, you have forward momentum. And it doesn't matter how long it takes. I know you want to get there faster, but as long as you're moving in the right direction, every step in the right direction is not only one step closer, but one step completed. And every time you complete something, the path gets shorter. The major obstacles become less major. They become minor, and sometimes they disappear altogether. A good example of that is when I decided to honor my boundaries one day with somebody that I didn't really want to. I mean, I was afraid. But when I did, the major obstacle of honoring my boundaries my entire life got really small. It got minor because I took a risk. I took a step in that direction instead of stepping back. Instead of being the small, fearful child that I used to be every time a scary situation came up, I decided to risk it and take a chance no matter what the consequences were. And suddenly I was busting through an obstacle that held me back my entire life. That obstacle was no longer there. It was no longer something that was unachievable because I just did it. I went through the challenge and I passed the challenge. I made it happen, which took that obstacle out of my path. And it doesn't mean it's completely gone. It just means it's so minimal now, and I have this reference that I know I can do it now, that if and when it happens again, it won't be such a major hurdle that it'll hold me back anymore. And that's the point. As long as you're going forward in the right direction and sometimes taking risks, sometimes doing things that are scary and out of your comfort zone, then what you're going to find is that the major obstacles become minor, and maybe they'll even disappear. I'm not talking about utopia. I'm not talking about some fake place that exists outside your reality. I'm saying that this can absolutely happen in your reality. It can absolutely happen in your lifetime, and you deserve it. You deserve the life you want, and you deserve the life you want to create for yourself and those you love. You deserve it. Never forget that. And always keep an open mind. This is what helps you step into your power. Always take steps to grow and evolve. You are powerful beyond measure. And above all, and this is something I absolutely know to be true about you, you are amazing.